very special edition of the Ulster Rugby Roundup show. My name is David Topping. I'm the Wingnut, and this is Three Mics, a Wingnut, and Weebod. Welcome to the show, everybody. Packed show for you tonight. I'm very much looking forward to bringing the best of what I would say is a very eclectic bunch of lovely people to have a chat with us this evening. First of all, I'd like to thank the Night King for letting me jump off the wall for a while. Managed to sneak through Castle Black and on my way somewhere else so I can be with you this evening. First of all, I want to give a wee shout out to a couple of people. First of all, our good friends at Kinaku Biltong, who is headed by Ulster's Ilse von Staden. And they supply biltong and Drew and have recently won bronze in the Northern Ireland Independent Retail Awards for butchery. So well done to Ilse and partner, and very much looking forward to having a wee go at some of that. And also to our good friends at coffeedog.ie. That's our good friend Johnny Pullen, who's now brought out a very special blend for Mr. Joe Shep himself called the Shep Blend. And if you use the code Shep, you will get 20% off. So have a wee go at that. Okay, the way I looked at it tonight was, this is take two. Now I could have went, but I wouldn't do that because I would just send shivers up everybody's spine just thinking that we're not getting any sound again. But tonight I wanted to give a program to the people who come into our homes, into our kitchens, into our cars. They describe action for us on a weekly basis, and sometimes on a 2 weekly basis, depending on which rugby you're watching. And what they do is they give us the sights, the emotions, and pretty much tell the story of some of the best rugby matches that we've ever seen. And those are the commentators and sportcasters. And tonight I've reassembled the crack team for take two. So first of all, I'm going to introduce our first guest. She started her career with BBC Radio Sussex and joined BBC Radio Sports as a producer. In 1995, she succeeded one of our other guests to become BBC's Rugby Union senior producer. She's commentated in every Olympic Games since Atlanta and has covered World Championship athletics, boat race, and now appearing with a wingnut on a wall, and the star of the Sport and the Peels podcast. And she covered recently the Fijian Sevens gold medal at the Rio Olympics. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sonia McLaughlin.
Hi, Sonia. Hello. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Thanks for joining us again.
That's all right.
I know we had our wee gremlins there last time around, but thankfully everything's appeared, even the sound, so that's all good.
Excellent. Joining
Sonia tonight, we have a gentleman who's no stranger to the oval ball. He played at Lock for Manly and rival town Warringah. He managed to avoid the Sea Eagles. How he managed that, I have no idea. He's also gained representative honours with New South Wales at both under-19 and under-21 levels, and also played for Rovigo in Italy. After spending 10 years with Fox Sports Australia and being a recipient of the Gregan Stare and looking at the most ridiculous passes in the World 7 Series, his effortless enthusiasm for the game has provided entertainment to us all, and it continues on the World Rugby podcast. And now he's joined the 7-2 team covering the Shoots Shield games. But the question is, would he rejoin Manly if Michael Hooper returned? Mr. Sean Maloney, what's the answer?
I'm just happy to be rejoining you two now that the gremlins have been sorted out and my microphone actually works. Sonj, nice to see you.
Hello, Sean. I can confirm I can hear you.
Look, that's a start already. We're ahead of where we were last time. So let's get into it. Who's your next guest?
Sean, you'll love this one. Our final guest also made a move into rugby from a journalistic background, starting with the Loughborough Echo. Moved to the BBC in 1985 and then moved over to Radio 5 to be sports producer, where his paths merged with our Sonia. He's commentated at Wimbledon and at the Olympics, and recently I found out that he definitely knows his blindside flanker from his Uchimata. After moving from the BBC to the fledgling ESPN to cover their rugby coverage, he's now the senior commentator at BT Rugby Sports, and he's covered the Six Nations, the Heineken Cup, Aviva Premiership, and Rugby World Cups. His trademark tones are usually good news for us Ulster fans, so I'll never say anything bad about him. Now, straight off the 209 from Hammersmith, clutching his BAFTA, It's Nick Mullins.
Hello, David.
Hello, Nick. Good evening, sir.
Shawnee, son, what's going on? This is working.
Hello.
Well, the show's pretty much done now because we've just heard your intro, which went for about 35 minutes. So Sonja and I are done, and we'll just let you and Dave finish things off.
Thanks for turning up. Well done.
There'll be no talking to him now. He's a BAFTA winner. It'll be, can you get your people to talk to my people, please?
Well, me and Idris, what can I say? Me and Idris.
Well, look, the three of you are very welcome to the show tonight, and I know the guys have been looking very much forward to this. Obviously, it's not often that we get to see you guys up close and personal in real life, and I know Nick from from your own experiences. Obviously, you prefer to be shifting away on the 209 and the Hammersmith quicker than Roadrunner, but at the same time, what we'd like to try and do is sort of bring to our people who watch just an idea of what it takes, obviously, to be a commentator, and obviously concentrating on the full game, and obviously not just the game, but obviously everything that comes around with it. So the context of any story, obviously interviews, especially with yourself, Sonia, and of course, Shawnee. You just seem to get the prime things, like how did you manage to meet the Hoff? That was an absolute doozy, sir.
Well, I was lucky to meet him, but I feel more, and I'm sure Sonj is the same. We feel more, I guess, lucky is the right word, to be in the presence of Nick Mullins. So, Nick, we'll defer to you and let you go first, given that you're now a BAFTA winner, as mentioned. So, the floor's yours, sir.
I've never met the Hoff, though. Never met the Hoff. Is he the most? Have you met the Hoff?
I have met the Hoff. I've met the Hoff, and I've interviewed the Hoff. Yes.
You're a friend of the Stars, though, aren't you?
He was at a Wales All Blacks game at the Principality Stadium, and obviously his partner is Welsh, so he was supporting the home side and very much looking forward to watching the All Blacks do the haka.
What threw me, Sonj, was when I interviewed him earlier this year, which seems like 18 lifetimes ago at the LA Sevens, was he rocked up wearing makeup, and I just thought, what level of preparation? He's there in full kit, ready to go in the stands. Bang, the cameras going, the Hoffs, and he sang beautifully too.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think you were trying to join in as well, Sean.
We don't worry about my singing. It was shit house.
But then, Sean, you've had to also listen to Sebastian Chabal sing 500 Miles by the Proclaimers, so that's a different matter entirely.
Yeah, that's all part and parcel of it on the Sevens. I think that was more confronting watching the caveman sing that song. That was horrific because he was wearing like a little setup too. It was almost like a toga. It was a leopard print toga, and it's seared into my brain. And I can't kick it.
The way I look, and so a lot of people like myself would look at commentary. Obviously, you guys are there to tell a story, and Sonia, in your case, you get to ask the really good questions, the really awkward ones.
Sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Mr. Edward Jones comes to mind here, but actually, Sonia, I would have to say I've never seen Eddie Jones trapped in a corner the way you managed to catch him there. At the start of the Six Nations. First, how did you manage to do that? And secondly, how do you deal with the cagey answers from coaches?
The thing about Eddie is I haven't actually seen him since that interview. So actually, I'm quite nervous about the first time I see him again, because I'm thinking, is he going to talk to me again? But you have to put it in context.
No, he hates this one. He hates you. He's told me.
I always try and tickle him under the tummy by talking dogs or something, because he loves dogs and so do I. So I always try and soften him up a little bit. But maybe I'll need all of my charm when I meet him again after that one. But you have to put it in a little bit of context. England, yes, they had got to a World Cup final, and that was a remarkable achievement. But they fell at the final hurdle, and they were comprehensively beaten by the All Blacks. By South Africa. Then, of course, we went into the new Six Nations, and there he was. He came out punching, talking about how England were going to go over to Paris and they were going to beat up the French. And again, England were resoundingly beaten. And so my boss basically messaged me that week. He said, do you want to go and put Eddie Jones on the spot? And I kind of went, well, all right, I'll have a go. The important thing with any interview like that is that you do your homework. I always work on the basis that if anybody, player, coach, whoever it might be, and whether it's someone as high profile as Eddie Jones or it's a club coach, if they are good enough to give you their time, then I need to do my homework. So I always sit down in advance of an interview like that, and I work out thoroughly what I want for this interview. Why am I talking to him? What do I want to achieve from this? And I wanted to really get from him why he constantly likes to kind of, stand like Donald Bradman at the crease and spank the ball for six. He's punchy in press conferences, and I kind of wanted to know why he does it. Does he get bored? Is he trying to wind up the opposition? Is he trying to wind up his own team? Anyway, I don't want to go on for too long, but I then got this one-on-one interview with Eddie, and I thought to myself, well, this is being recorded, so I can keep asking this question, which was essentially, why do you say the things you do? And he really didn't want to answer the question. So I just thought, well, as long as if I can stay in the fight, if I can just hang in there, I know what he's like. Eventually, he will answer the question, and you've just got to be brave enough to stay in the fight. And so I just sort of asked it every which way, thinking, well, they can cut this out if they don't need all this flam, and they can always cut it out. But actually, in the end, they ran it in their entirety. And Eddie likes the joust. He played the game. He was a little bit he just was a little bit churlish, but actually he was playing to the camera. There was at no point in that interview did I actually think we were on the cusp of a standoff. Because that's when it really gets uncomfortable. And when you get to that point, you're losing your interviewee, and that's not a place you want to get to. And eventually he answered the question and just said, because I enjoy it, because I see my job as providing the theatre around the game. He wants people talking about rugby union, and he wants to be on the back pages. And whether that's, sometimes he oversteps the mark, and he admits he does, but he gets people talking about the game, and love him or loathe him, it works. But the one thing I wasn't going to do in that instance was let him have the floor, because sometimes he just needs to, all coaches, all players sometimes need to just justify what they're doing.
Yeah, whenever I watched the interview, you could see that verbal joust, and then obviously when you're able to sort of eke that answer out of him, and you could just see this little wry smile just on the side of the face, just saying, "Okay, yeah, I'll let you have that one." And you can see he enjoyed the verbals. Nick, you've had your fair share both of interviews and obviously commentating on matches and everything else in between. What would you prefer? Would you prefer the production side of the thing, or would you prefer the commentating side of the house? I've always wondered.
Yeah, I mean, they are two completely different jobs for folk who don't necessarily understand what a producer does. You're the person effectively who makes sure that the broadcast happens. And when I was rugby producer on BBC Radio, working very closely with people like Ian Robertson, I was also helping to book hotels, book flights. It really is, you're dirtying your fingers to make sure that World Cups are covered, Six Nations are covered. And then when you're at the ground, you're checking the wires, you're making sure that the batteries are working, you're making sure that Robbo can broadcast. Obviously, as a broadcaster, you are front of stage. So it's essentially the difference between backstage and front stage. And I love production. There's a real satisfaction out of doing it. And I produced the 95 World Cup, which was the last thing I did. And to be in Ellis Park that day, which actually... Japan-Scotland at the World Cup in Japan came close to matching Ellis Park that day, South Africa against New Zealand. But to be able to be in the ground then without the pressure of broadcasting is actually a real thrill as well. And Shawnee commentated on a World Cup final. Sonj was there as well. I'm not sure you would say that you necessarily enjoy the process of working on such a high-profile event when you are on the stage, as we are to a degree. Whereas with the production side of things, once you're up and running, you can actually sit back and enjoy it a little bit. So it swings and roundabouts. It's what you'd rather enjoy.
Yeah, I was thinking, certainly with obviously as a producer back in '95, watching that 747 coming over Ellis Park, I can only imagine, what atmosphere was generated after that fly past. But as you say, the Japan-Scotland game certainly, even just sitting and watching it, you could feel the crackle of the atmosphere, coming through, and then obviously from the description from yourselves, it was just, it's just one of those matches you say, "Oh, I'm glad I actually sat down and watched that." And I think in the end, I'm sure that's what the end result would be best for. You could say, "Well, job well done." If somebody's coming around and saying, "Well, that was an excellent commentary. I enjoyed the way that complemented the action on the screen." Well, Shawnee, I've always marveled at the way you deliver some of those classic lines, especially in your time on Fox Sports doing the top 5 on Rugby HQ. What inspired the top 5s in the first place?
Basically, I wanted to sort of buck the trend the way that the rugby coverage was going down here. It was so, I guess it was just so old school. It was the same thing over and over again. And I just wanted something that would cut through and not reach just normal rugby fans, but people who are on the periphery as well. So kids, I'm so hell-bent on creating content that will get kids, because if you've got content that's good enough to capture a 9-year-old, then keeping a 25-year-old on the line as well it's a walk in the park. So if you can hit the kids and make moving pictures to get them engaged, then half the battle's done. So, mate, that's where that all kicked off. But I had the exact same background as Sonj and Nick both in production. And the reason I went into it, and it seems to be kind of a pattern, that if you can work out what makes good TV, when you eventually get to that point, then it kind of complements one another. And the other thing that you learn as well, and I'm sure the other two would climb into this as well, is you're quite powerful as a TV producer, especially when it comes to line producing, doing a match. You can shape the direction and storyline of a game. You can create a hero, you can create a villain, you can have your EBS team bunch up as many mistakes as you can of a play that you don't like. You can have replays rolled in that look contentious, that create doubt in the viewer's mind around how the referee's going. Like, it's a super powerful position being a producer, and in some ways, I don't know, Sonja, Nick, do you reckon almost when you look back, it's kind of like broadcasting is kind of easy in comparison because there's so much going on behind the scenes if you're a producer?
Oh, I don't know. I'm actually convinced that one day someone's going to work out that I'm a total fraud. Honestly, I swear I have imposter syndrome. I sat in the stadium in Yokohama in Japan about to present the Rugby World Cup final for network radio on Radio 5 Live in this country. And I just had a moment just before we were going to go on air, and I was going to do my big intro and set the scene. And I just almost had one of those moments where I went, what the hell am I doing here? I literally had to talk myself out of it and say, you're here, you're good enough, you know your stuff, you can do this, go for it. And I think I'm not sure I ever felt that as a producer. As a producer, I was always quite confident in what I was doing, whereas I still think as a broadcaster, I'm learning all the time. Every time I do something, I think, what do I take? What did I learn today? Did I do that right? Could I have done that better? Shouldn't have asked that question. There's always that level of just thinking, I've got to keep developing, because you're never too old as a broadcaster. Don't you think, Nick? You're never too old to keep learning.
Well, I'm really interested in what Shawnee said about doing it differently. And I think as a producer, when I was at BBC Radio in the early 90s, I worked with some fantastic broadcasters that I'd grown up listening to as a kid, people like Ian Robertson, but on other sports, Brian Butler, football commentator that we had here, Christopher Martin Jenkins on cricket. Suddenly we were working with these people. And one of the thrills of being a producer in my mid-20s at that point was that I could actually just sit back and listen to them and work out what I liked and what I didn't like, and why either of those two sides worked and didn't work. So I'm thinking about it all the time. But I think what Shawnee says about attracting a different audience and knowing what that audience is absolutely key to broadcasting. And I, you know, I don't like to be critical of broadcasters because it's a flipping difficult thing to do without annoying everybody all the time. But when I hear people who haven't been broadcasting long, I hear people who don't know who they're talking to. And I think you've got to know what your audience is. And if you want to change the audience or expand the audience like Shawnee's keen to do, you need to know how to do that. And that's quite a challenge, I think, particularly with a sport like ours, which is complicated. My mum, who hasn't missed a minute of my commentary over the last 20 years, only realised that they throw the ball backwards. And you know, that's the level sometimes of what we're dealing with. You know, we're getting big audiences during World Cups and Six Nations. There'll be a lot of people, oftentimes us included, who have no idea what's going on. And you know, that's what I love about the job. I love the challenge of selling a complicated sport to an audience who don't really get it, who don't get what we love about the sport, and we're passionate about it. And I think the job of the commentator and the reporter and the broadcaster is to try and inject our love into other people. I always think, and I'd love to know what Sanj and Shawnee think about this. I always think when I'm commentating, I want to say things that would have somebody wanting to sit next to me in the stand and not wanting to move away.
Oh.
And also, by the same token, not saying too much. We've all sat next to the know-it-all at a rugby match and thought, will you just give it a rest? And we've all sat next to people where we've learned things. And I think that's also the job of a broadcaster. There are a million tiny things that go into it, but Sanj and Shawnee have covered the top ones early on, I think. Well,
looks like we're getting a few comments in here from the guys watching here. Nigel Quigley here, he says, this will be, hello Sonia, it must be fun though when you corner a coach saying that and they give you the, what's she going to ask look.
Yeah, I've had that a fair few times.
Actually, Nigel also asked, does EJ have a long memory of tough interviews?
I genuinely think that he was rattled, and I mean, you know, other people maybe can say more about it than I can, but he was upset in the following week after the interview I did with him, and he then decided to actually clam up for about a week and not say very much. So I don't think I was entirely popular with the rest of the press pack. But you know, Warren Gatland is another one. These are all highly successful coaches.
Yeah,
we can argue that Warren Gatland's going. I want to ask Sean about this actually, the impact of what's happening with old Warren down in the southern hemisphere. But
we certainly will.
These are extremely successful coaches. They're successful for a reason because they're in charge, and they're well respected by their teammates, their players, their fellow coaches, and they like to keep you on your toes.
Yeah,
they don't like it if the relationship between reporter and coach gets too cozy. And when I thought I had cracked it with Warren Gatland, I did the final interview with him ahead of his last Six Nations game with Wales, and we did a sit down at the Vale of Glamorgan, which is the Wales base in just outside Cardiff. Did this lovely interview, and afterwards, for the first time in 10 years, he gave me a hug. I almost fell over. I was so shocked. I was like, and the producer looked at me, and I'm looking at the producer. I'm going, "Yep, did you get that on camera?" He hugged me, okay. And then the day of the game, post match, he's walking away and he won't talk to me because he suddenly decided he's slightly taken umbrage at something I said in the interview, and he's giving me a hard time on the pitch. So that was him kind of reasserting his authority in that moment. It's like, no, you're not. We're not friends. This is the relationship. I'm in charge, and that's how they like it. And so it's quite unsettling as a reporter because just when you think you've got a level of respect between reporter and coach, they go and move the goalposts again. And so you always have to be on your toes and you have to be well prepared. And if you are, generally, you will stay in the contest.
Oh, that's great, Sonia. Thank you. I just got another couple of comments here. Mr. Johnny Wappa coming through there. Good evening, Johnny. He says, having to listen to the likes of Brian Moore would occasionally make the mute button my best friend. And I can understand, Brian can get a little worked up there from time to time. But the Night King, there's the Night King himself. Nice and quickly.
I'll have sat next to Brian Moore and commentated with him. So what is that for Johnny? You can perhaps explain to him what the experience is like.
Well,
that wasn't a curveball, by the way. That
was a massive curveball. It's right under the bus.
Crikey. Brian doesn't need me to defend him, but I think there's a big difference between commentating on the radio and commentating on the television. And I think when you commentate on the radio, you have to work really hard to get people to dislike you, because there's an intimacy about it. And you almost feel by switching the radio on that you're inviting them into your living room, into your car. As soon as you go onto television, I think you just cop more flack, because the audience is bigger, for one thing. And inevitably, in a room full of 100 people, however lovely you are and however much your mum loves you, there will always be people who just don't get you, who don't like you. It doesn't mean that Brian isn't a brilliant broadcaster who creates talking points and speaks his mind and is the person off screen that you hear on screen. And very often that's not the case, incidentally. Brian is an exceptional broadcaster. The fact that one or two people don't like his style, I couldn't care less about. There'll be people who don't like me. There'll be people who don't like Shawnee and Sonj. We can't afford to care less about that. Essentially, as long as the boss likes us, and as long as our mums like us, and the majority of the audience like us, you've got to live with the fact that you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And I suspect that Brian will not lose a wink of sleep tonight, I'm afraid, Johnny.
Knowing Brian and knowing the way that he's talked about rugby, certainly I would have to agree with you there, Nick. Now, moving on a wee bit here, I want to try and sort of give the people watching an idea of what it's been like. We've been living in strange times, and that's for sure. And what was the reaction amongst yourselves when we sort of moved into this period of lockdown? Obviously, everything has sort of ground to a halt everywhere, and what would have been sort of the first reactions? Whenever we've seen things grind to a halt, Sonia, what were your first instincts?
Well, I didn't think it was going to last as long as it did. If I'm really honest, it was the first time in 30 odd years of doing this job that I didn't have any work. And that has taken a real period of adjustment, because yes, I'm freelance now, and I was, like Nick, I was BBC staff for 20 odd years, and I've been freelance for a decade. And I've always worked. It sort of defines who I am. I love my job. I've worked hard to get where I am, and it's part of my whole, the fibre of my being is going to work and being productive. So to suddenly not be able to do that, it was the first time, it also made me realise just quite how reliant I am on live sport, because without live sport, I don't have a job. And so I've done a lot of thinking about, can I really put myself in this position going forward? Because we don't know how long it's going to take for sport to come back to some level of normality. Are we even going to get, Olympic Games has been moved by a year. Is it actually going to go ahead? Nobody knows. And if it does, is it going to be behind closed doors? So still this level of flux and uncertainty, and it's made me really, not panic, but it's just made me think, gosh, what am I? without live sport, because it's everything to me, and it's everything to the fans who watch it. And I've had to start thinking about maybe creating a few other avenues for myself, just so that I potentially, if this goes on for longer, I might have some other revenue streams up my sleeve. So yeah, it's period of reflection needed.
Mm-hmm. Nick, what was going through your mind whenever whenever the lockdown was called?
Oh well, I can't add any more to what Sonj spoke so eloquently about when it comes to life as a freelance, because we've all had to tighten our belts. Positively, I actually needed a rest, to be honest. Came off the back of the World Cup, straight into the Premiership, straight into the Heineken Cup, straight into the Six Nations. I was running on fumes. So if you want me to be absolutely honest, I've quite enjoyed doing nothing for 3 months, and I feel reinvigorated, and I can't wait for the Premiership season to restart. So that's a positive in an extremely negative situation. Another positive is that there's nothing I don't know about Winterfell now. I've become a Game of Thrones expert. I am a Dothraki warrior in my dreams. So all those box sets, I'm just like everybody else. We've caught up with those things. I also pathologically can't throw newspapers away that I've not read. So I had an 8 mile high, actually just over there in that corner, and you can't see them anymore because I've read them all. Because I've had 3 months to go through the Sunday Times dating back to 2018. So yeah, I've missed sport, of course, and I can't wait to a week on Friday when we're back down the road at the Stoop. But yeah, I needed the break, to be honest, and I wanted to know what Game of Thrones was all about.
Well, in that case, then I certainly know that our lead here, the Night King himself, Nigel Quigley, will be very pleased to hear that one. You've managed to recruit another White Walker, maybe, Nigel.
I can see Shawnee as a White Walker, actually.
Yeah, no, I'd happily get on board with that crew, though it all, spoiler alert, it all comes crashing down rather spectacularly, doesn't it? So maybe I'll go with you with the Dothraki. They kind of had a better run at it. Just to jump into you guys, it's funny, I have struggled horribly in the aftermath of having no rugby on because of the nature of the Sevens tournament that we cover off. Came back from Vancouver, touchdown in Sydney. We went into full lockdown. I was like, shit, this is actually kind of not great. Then we had the postponement of Hong Kong, Singapore, Paris, London got chopped off. And what I struggled with so badly was that complete loss, that adrenaline hit you get, like you touched on, Sonj, before the red light hits or before the director cues you in. To have that stripped away overnight was really, really tricky. It's hard to describe the energy that courses through you in front of or inside a stadium of 75,000 people going absolutely berserk, and then knowing your voice, your career hinges on getting one word wrong. Like if you swear or whatever, it all comes crashing down. So to have that high energy, high risk thing stripped away overnight, it's a hard thing to replace. I don't know what the answer to. I'm struggling. While you're looking at potential other revenue streams, Sonj, I'm looking at ways to replace that energy hit and that adrenaline surge that comes through with commentary and presenting as well. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, from our perspective, as fans, obviously we like to see in the return, obviously at the Pro 14, we see the return of the Heineken Cup. We see the Premiership coming back very soon as well. And obviously in your case, Shawnee, obviously you took the role with 7-2 for the Shoot Shield. And obviously as you say, it's about getting that little fix of the live experience. I'll be honest with you, even 2 weeks ago, whenever we first tried this out, I knew exactly how you felt, even if it was for only 10 minutes before everything went south. But obviously, but even for myself, I felt that adrenaline rush, and I understand only to a very sort of tiny, infinitesimal degree, obviously where you're coming from with that. Where do you see things, looking for yourselves now, sort of in the sort of medium long term? Now, obviously, it may take some time for the game to return, in some form, and obviously, Shawnee, as we've heard about Victoria going back into lockdown again. Where do you see things, coming in sort of the medium long term for yourselves, Sonia?
I mean, I think it's still really difficult when we don't know the trajectory that this disease is going to take. We're seeing pubs and restaurants, in Aberdeen in Scotland, they've had to close again. So we're getting spikes here, there. Nick comes from Leicester, and they've experienced a partial lockdown again. So we just don't know what this disease is going to do. On the one hand, I see some light at the end of the tunnel, because look, I'm going to show you, because I've got my desk here. Nick, this will make Nick laugh. This will make Nick laugh. Look, Nick and I still use the Filofax. We are children of the 80s. There, you see, children of the 80s. Sean's probably never seen one of these.
Looks like a doorstop.
Never catch on, son.
It is. It is quite weight. It is a weighty tube. But it's quite exciting that I've actually been able, not as neat as Nick. If anybody's seen Nick's handwriting, they'll know how neat it is. Mine isn't as neat as that. But I have now got some dates in my diary. So I'm going to be doing Wasp Sale in the Premiership with Nick on BT Sport. And I've got some presenting on 5 Live around some Premiership matches, and a couple of magazine shows that we do on 5 Live with Matt Dawson. So in the short term, it's just really exciting to know that I'm going to be back on air, broadcasting, that adrenaline rush, as Sean mentions. And the other thing, of course, is actually just seeing your colleagues. I mean, I don't live on my own. Well, I do live on my own, but I also live on I have a dog. So I'm never lonely, because I have my dog with me. But it's been quite hard for the last, several months not seeing your mates. And I went for a long walk not so long ago, and took a detour past Nick Mullins's front door, and went in and just went, hi, just so I could see another human being, So it's going to be fantastic just to be able to see your mates again. And I think that's so important. We talk a lot about mental health in sport these days, don't we? And how important that is for the players. And it's just as important actually for those of us who missed the game and have missed our mates.
Do there's an interesting thing on that as well, because I remember at the start of lockdown, and I don't know whether it's the same with you in Australia, Shawnee, but everybody saying how wonderful it will be to be able to work from home. Essentially, when we're not at stadiums broadcasting, or occasionally going to training grounds to watch teams run around, we are working from home. And there will be days where, when my wife walks out in the morning, she's the last voice I speak to, and the first voice I hear as well when she comes back in the evening. It can be incredibly lonely working from home, as I think a lot of people are beginning to work out. And as much as maybe commuting 5 days a week might not be an ideal situation, you do miss that sociability of work. And we've had that throughout our careers, because a lot of what you do, certainly when you're prepping, is a very it's a solo exercise. And I think one of the interesting things with lockdown for me is people realizing that actually working from home all the time has its drawbacks as well.
Especially when you don't get that compliment of being able to actually interact with people on the other side when you do go to work to enjoy that. No, I totally agree. Hey, Sonj, great point on Nick's handwriting. I'm looking at his team sheets from 2007 on Twitter. We should be putting his handwriting into a time capsule so that future generations can just look back and go, that's magnificent.
It is a total work of art. I during lockdown, look, I've got one of mine here. I'm just going slightly off stage left. These are the notes. I don't know. Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh yeah, no.
This is one of my team sheets. This was Wasps against Bath in 2014. It's just randomly sitting on my desk. Hang
on. I have to ask, what are your notes doing randomly sitting on your desk at 10:15? Whatever.
Remembering the better times.
There's that. But no, I had a clear out at the start of lockdown, like so many people did. It's like, what am I going to do? And I had a pile of these notes in my desk in my back bedroom. And so I thought, what am I going to do with them? And I was about to put them in the recycling. And there's a part of me that just sort of stopped and went, ooh, there's a lot of work gone into those. I felt like I felt a bit like I can't put. They're like my children. I can't put them in the bin. You know, there's a lot of time and effort gone into it. So I just posted a picture of them on Twitter, this enormous pile, 2 piles. And I said, anybody got any idea? What should I do with these? And so this started a sort of ball rolling, and it developed, and then I was completely caught by surprise, and people wanted them. And so I set up a Just Giving page for a food bank called the Trussell Trust to provide for food banks. And I raised about £1,600 just selling, not to sell them, but gifting my notes to rugby fans. And some of the stories, there was one, I think the World Cup final from 2015, New Zealand, Australia, that's going to a guy who bought it for his dad for his birthday. There was a lady got the whole of this year's Six Nations notes. She's going to use them with dementia patients to sort of to talk to them about rugby. There was one guy his son was a mascot at the England-Italy game, and so he bought England-Italy notes for the day his son had been a mascot at Twickenham. And so they've had this second life as who'd have thought these random scribblings would then they've got on people's downstairs, framed and in people's downstairs toilets. So this then led to a conversation. I'll let Nick tell this conversation, because I'm happy for these to go, because I use them in the moment on the pitch. In case I get brain fade, I can refer to them. But it's kind of it's gone in for that game. The knowledge is there. Mm-hmm. Whereas Nick's, they're like his children and his extended family. There is no way on God's earth that Nick is parting with his match notes, because A, there's a lot of work gone into them. B, they are like a work of art. They are so beautiful. So when Nick said to me, well, Sonj, you've given me a heart attack. You're giving your notes away. I was like, I'm fine about it. But I said, the only thing I do want going forward is for my birthday, which is next month, just hint, hint, Nick, is a set of Nick's notes framed for my office. Would be the best birthday present. Nick.
It's a no.
No. On the spot there, Mr. Mullins.
You do know what kind of notes do you do, Sean? How do you? Because Kevin's is different, isn't it? Because you're.
Yeah, so just looking at yours, I've got yours here. My mind has melted already. So I go 1 through 15, and then obviously 16 through 23, which is what you've got here. My handwriting looks like someone has wedged a Sharpie into a drunk seal's mouth and had it attempt to get the names down. It was funny at the World Cup last year. So for the first run of pool games, I had Andrew Mertens as my expert upstairs.
Oh, you poor man. How did you survive that?
Well, we babysat each other, Son. So managed to get through that. And he knew how, like, he knows the level of prep that goes in. And we'd sort of lock away from each other to try and do the right thing the nights before games. So he knew that prep had gone in, but he also knew that my handwriting was horrendous. Martin Williams, who I crossed over to join him and Carl Tanana, I'll never forget, like, the first game of call with Big Martin. I unfolded my team sheet and he looked down. He looked at me like I was seriously challenged, because you couldn't understand anything. He's like, "How are you going to get through a game looking at that junk?" And it just works. Like, it just works for people in different ways, I guess.
Oh, wow. Well, look, everybody.
Come on, can I just ask Nick? Nick, you need to say that you then actually had heart palpitations, didn't you, at the thought of parting with any? Because people then start saying, "Well, Nick Mullins, are you going to donate yours to charity?" And you couldn't say, "Actually, no, I'm not."
Well, no, listen, what on earth can I say, Sonj, that doesn't make me sound like the most cold-hearted beast in the history of cold-hearted beasts? I do occasionally give them away to
your best friend on their birthday.
No, I don't do that.
Oh, okay.
But if somebody says we'd quite like to auction them, then I might do that. I gave England, Scotland 38 all a couple of years ago. A charity in Edinburgh who look after homeless where they can, auction those. So I do sometimes give them away, but I don't give them away even to my best friends on their birthday.
Oh, well, look, everybody, your Very welcome, and everybody. You're here with Sonny McLaughlin, Nick Mullins, and Sean Maloney here on an absolutely fantastic edition of three mics of Wingnut and Weebod.
Can I just say?
Yes, Sonia.
McLaughlin, Mullins, and Maloney. Does that not sound like a firm of solicitors or something?
It sounds like a 1980s TV cop drama.
Doesn't it?
Sounds like, yeah.
It doesn't it?
You're the chief of police, and Nick and I are your handy lieutenants.
Yeah, I love
around
it.
solving issues.
I love it.
Is Dave the Wingnut the power behind the throne? Is he?
No, I'm just more like MacGyver, you know. I'll get into the scripts and sort of talk my way out of it. Well, looking at some of the comments here coming up, the Night King himself, the guy who I report to, Nigel Quigley, he says, "Fantastic stuff, guys, and it highlights how this the whole forced change in behaviour has affected everyone." Jamesy Cowan, welcome to the Three Blokes family. Jamesy says, "I think Nick is just throwing a few numbers away there." Let's have a look here. Oh, hold on a second. There's my mum. Gene Topping, fantastic show so far. Great to hear. Thank you very much, Mum.
Hi, Gene.
And Nigel says, "Mental pictures of drunken seals. Love them."
Heavily drunk.
In fact, actually, Big Joe Chef from behind, he says, hashtag the untouchables. You know, for you three, so certainly I would agree with you on that one.
Yeah, maybe.
The unlistenables, I think, maybe.
Hey, before heading in different directions, can I ask Sonj? Can I ask you a question? And it's been at the forefront of my mind for a long, long time. One of the hardest things I think in broadcast is to ask questions of a losing captain or player. How do you begin that interview without prefacing it with a statement? And how do you get them to talk without you sounding, I guess, like a smart ass? How do you do it? How is that skill honed?
I think the key moment in an interview like that is the 20 seconds before you go live.
Mm-hmm.
And so funny enough, the names that spring to mind, Stuart Lancaster, when England were knocked out of the Rugby World Cup in 2015, he knew he had to do the interview. I knew I had to do the interview with him. Really difficult because he's hurting big time, but England have gone out of their own World Cup, haven't even made the quarterfinals. You've got to ask some hard questions, but you've got to do it in such a way that you are not just going to trample on this man's emotions, because you can see how much they're hurting. But I find that I just have to, in that 20 seconds, sometimes I'll just tap somebody on the elbow. I just go, "Are you okay?" And they'll go, yeah. And I say, "I'm really sorry, but I have to do this." And they go, "Yeah." They go, "Yeah, I know." And you just established almost in that 20 seconds the rules of engagement. It's like, if you're going to go into battle, you need to know what the rules are. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's having you've got to, in that moment, even though as a journalist, I'm itching to get in there with the kind of, what's gone wrong? You know, that's the first question. What went wrong?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's almost the first question to Stuart Lancaster. But you've got to have some humility as well in that moment, and just put your own desire to ask the question to one side, so that you just don't sound like you are trampling on somebody's emotions in a very, very difficult situation. So it's having that relationship really helps, so that he knows me, I know him. Taking 20 seconds to ask if they're okay, or if they need time, because sometimes they might just need another minute, which you can then relay to the director and say, "Give him 60 seconds here. He needs to compose himself." Have that conversation. Do your guest, be kind to your guest, basically. But then at the same time, you've got to say to yourself, to the first question, I think to Stuart Lancaster, that was, "Can you describe your emotions right now, knowing it's over?" And you've got to keep the question really short.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to take up precious time in that moment waffling. And so many people, reporters in that moment, Sean, waffle.
Yeah.
and you're just going, cut the waffling.
Yeah.
Get to the point.
Yeah, it's such a honestly,
Because-
it's amazing. It's amazing skill. It really is. I don't, Nick. I don't know. Do you look back and look at people who are in those positions and just go, "Wow, that's not an easy thing to be able to deliver on the spot"?
I think it's the hardest. It's the hardest part of the area of broadcasting that we work in, Sean. It's much harder than commentating because
I totally agree.
No question.
Because particularly in TV, if you don't know what to say, you don't say anything. You just shut up. You can't do that. You know, you are so exposed, and the emotions are never rawer with a you know, that interview with Owen Farrell 2 minutes after the World Cup final. I mean, where do you start? And also, it can be incredibly uncomfortable for the audience as well. And the job of the best broadcaster is in a fairly unnatural environment that is broadcasting to make it sound normal and natural and perfectly acceptable. And that's hard. You know, you're having a conversation, which is the toughest conversation in the world. I have a question, since we're asking questions of each other. My question for Shawnee is what he thinks of neutral or partial commentators. How do you view it when you're commentating on Australia? How do you commentate on Australia when you're an Australian?
Great question. I have zero bias towards either of the two teams. I don't care who wins in that moment. My first thought when doing any game is to deliver sound bites that the players can take to their grandkids 20, 30 years from now and be proud of, to show pictures and then have the words that match the pictures. So, mate, I find it hard stomaching listening to people who are outwardly biased in commentary. It drives me mad. I just can't handle it. So, knowing that, I go completely the other direction, and I just don't care. Like if Fiji had have held on and defeated Australia in that opening pool game in Sapporo last year, I wouldn't have cared. I would not have cared. I would have been happy for Fiji. Similarly, if Wales then had beaten Fiji a few weeks on, I just don't have any buy into it. I just do not care who wins games as long as I can't handle it.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I think it's important that people like us stand up against partiality, because you know if I could ship something to Room 101, it would be commentators saying we and us and then, because that cannot exist in commentary. And I just love you hearing saying that, Shawnee.
At the BBC, those words are banned, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those words are banned at the BBC for obvious reasons.
They should be banned in every commentary box.
Given the geographical nature of the British Broadcasting Corporation, we are not the ECB. We are not the English Broadcasting Corporation, which sometimes we are accused of being. So, you know, if you're doing a commentary, you've got to be appreciative that you're broadcasting to the whole, certainly for a Five Live point of view at a Rugby World Cup, you're broadcasting to the whole of the United Kingdom, not just England, albeit it is your biggest audience by the very nature of the country. And, you know, it's been drummed into us from the word dot. You don't say we or us, even if it's, you know, at an Olympic Games and you're talking about Team GB, there is this tendency to drift into us, that type of language. I always rein myself in, and it's always the Great Britain team or Team GB as opposed to us, because we're not Radio GB. We still have to have a perspective on it that might mean that you've got some negative and some criticism and some issues that you want to discuss, so that you can't be. We're not fans with microphones. I think that's the key thing that you always have to remember.
Well, that's what the great Richie would have said, and certainly Bill McLaren on this side of the world, Shawnee. That's what it's all about, I think. And I'm just, you know, I'm worried about the amount of partiality creeping in. Football commentaries during the World Cup, you know, watching England play here in London, the number of times even the first voice commentator used we and us, I was throwing things at the television. I'm either getting too old or we need to slap some backsides. But if you're slapping backsides with me, Shawnee, then I'm happy.
Nick, I'm sorry to sort of interrupt there. I had a wee question here from our Night King himself, Nigel Quigley. Nigel says, in case it was missed, he said he'd like to know how you would, for example, as a key commentator, how would you handle a player pundit that's got a little upset when his team aren't doing particularly well?
Well,
how would you sort of be sort of a cooler, if you will?
Well, I'm thankful for the fact that I don't work with second voices or experts for BT or for ITV who allow that kind of emotion to show on air, I hope. I remember after the Shorty will enjoy this in particular, after England-Australia in 2015 down the road at Twickenham, after England had been dumped out of their own World Cup, I remember Lawrence rearranging our wooden commentary box. They had to get the builders in after. But I allow Lol to do that because he's captained England. I wouldn't allow Lol to show that kind of anger on air, though, because there'll be Australians listening to it who are enjoying it just as much as English folk are not enjoying it. And you know, the guys I work with, as I'm sure it's the same with the other two, they understand that, you know, Brian O'Driscoll understands when we're doing Ireland against whoever, it's the story. We're looking for his analysis, not his partiality. So it's a good question, but I thankfully have never had to deal with somebody who steps over the boundary. Apart from
just very quickly, I had a situation last year through the World Cup where I had to talk Andrew Mertens off a cliff on air. We were doing the Australia-Uruguay game, and he was teeing off about the referee. The TMO brought back a certain Los Terros try right on halftime, and I can see when he builds to it because he starts crossing his arms and he throws his hands around like this. He gets really, really worked up. And there was a game a few weeks earlier where he'd done similar, and it kind of was like right on the precipice of getting too stuck into a ref. So on air, I had to say to him, Mertz, you take the headsets off, you take 5. I'll get us to halftime, and then Melody Robinson will have our chat with whoever was doing the walk-off or whatever we're up to at halftime. And it's exactly how it played out. And it gave him a chance sort of just to go, all right, hang on a second. Yeah. I'm just gonna cool out for a moment. But yeah, I'm the same as you, Nick. I've never had a situation where they've been outwardly blowing up about it. It's more just towards the referee.
Yeah, I think also what's important, and you know, whether folk get this or not, we have to be the captain of the commentary box. And it might be a strange situation when you're working alongside somebody like Andrew Mertens or Brian O'Driscoll or Brian Habana, but they want us to be in charge. And we do that with eye contact, with physical contact sometimes. You know, and if Lawrence is talking when I should be talking, I'm thumping him. You know, I'm thumping him in his arm because he knows that he has to shut up. So you're in charge. We're in charge of the commentary box, despite the fact that we've won no test caps. When it comes to broadcasting, we have to be the bosses. We have to set the tone in the box. And the moment you kind of sit there in awe of the guy or the girl who's sitting next to you, you've lost control of the commentary box.
It's a little bit like that on the touchline, actually, in that hurly-burly of that minute or 2 minutes after the final whistle, when you've got to get that interview with the winning captain or man of the match, as it normally is in the very first moment. And you've got the director sort of shouting in your ear. You've got a floor manager that's grabbing you and wants you to stand in a certain position. You've got a sound man, a cameraman. They all want a piece of your time. And I learned quite quickly that if I allowed that situation to get out of control, I would be lost. And actually, I decided that given it was my voice that was going to be the one on the line there in that really intense moment, I thought, I'm the one that's going to take charge here. So I almost kind of, if somebody's trying to tell me something and I just like, no, not now. I'm in charge here, okay? And I want, because the most important thing in that moment is me having that 20 seconds to talk to the player and just say, are you okay? And if I've got people trying to pull me left and right, I can't have that 20 seconds. And I need that 20 seconds to know what mood that player is in. Because if they're really grumpy, I kind of need to know that before I launch in with my first question. And so I've learned to kind of just go, no, you stay there. You're there, right? Let's do this. And it works, because you have to have that level of, I just need some thinking time. I just need that thinking time. And if you let people push you and shove you around, you're just sunk.
Well, just to sort of finish things off, folks, I just want to run a couple of wee quick questions. I thought I'd pick a few just to sort of maybe throw things up a wee bit here. Sean, now, the first time I seen you on a screen was doing the top 5 on Rugby HQ. I'll be honest with you, and I've seen everything from the Falcons to the whoopsie moments. But who would you have in your top 5 interviews?
Oh, that's a great question, man. That's a really good question.
See, Nick's got thinking time now.
Yeah, no, I know. Can I have my 20 seconds, please? Just stop back in a sec. Can you ask Nick his question or Sanj hers, and then I'll come off the back? I just need a moment to actually, no, I've got it. This is the most memorable.
Okay,
I certainly
present it in top 5 fashion here. Come on, Johnny.
I can't do that, but this was as wacky as one of those segments. It was me interviewing Pete de Villiers. Can you guys remember Pete de Villiers, a former Springboks coach? Yeah. I was up in Brisbane doing them. They come straight from New Zealand, and it had been a tough loss over there, and he outwardly accused New Zealand of rigging it. It must have been 2011, of rigging the results so that there'd be more people involved in the game. And with the World Cup coming up, that was his whole thing. He basically said it. And at the time, I was like, hey, Sanj would have this. You have this moment where you go, did he seriously just say that? And then I remember ringing back to HQ and saying, I'm pretty sure Pete de Villiers has just accused the New Zealand board and everyone else of rigging the results so there'd be more people involved in the World Cup, more eyeballs on it. And took it back, and sure enough, it was like really, really questionable. One of my ex-colleagues, Brendan Cannon, then referred to him as a clown on air. Then the Springboks said that they wouldn't do any media commitments unless Cannon apologised for calling him a clown, and it all just unravelled from that. So that would be the most memorable one, when you have that moment where you go, oh my God, he just said it, and then it all just unfurled the way it did. So Pete de Villiers is the most memorable.
Oh, brilliant. Sonia, what would be, of all the games you've been involved with, what would be your favourite?
Games? Oh, that's easy. And it's a game that I wasn't working at, but I was there to bear witness to it. And it was the 1999 Rugby World Cup semi-final at Twickenham. And I have never known an atmosphere like it. It was the day that it looked like the All Blacks were just going to take their rightful passage towards a World Cup final, and the French had other ideas. And I have no idea to this day where it came from. But in the second half, Allez le Bleu, they played rugby from the gods. Philippe Bernard-Sal was running around scoring tries with his mop of grey hair flying in the breeze. And I saw wizened old hacks that day in the press box sort of stand and applaud the French team off the pitch. It was one of the most remarkable comebacks. We all love a comeback in sport, don't we? And I think it was just one of the most remarkable comebacks I've ever seen on a rugby pitch, excuse me. And it's right. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in Sydney when Johnny Wilkinson dropped the goal and England beat Australia in extra time. That was exciting. But just the wondrous nature of the comeback that day, France beating the All Blacks to reach the Rugby World Cup final of 1999 was breathtaking.
Wow, fantastic. And Nick, I've saved the best for last here. Now, those of you who follow Nick on Twitter, there's only just one question we have to ask. Nick, where did you get that lovely yellow suit?
Oh, that was for a charity. Ben and Austin Healy are opening the programme wearing it. It was for, oh crikey, what's the Primrose charity, Sonj? Can't remember what it is. The yellow, is it?
The cancer charity, Marie Curie, is it?
Marie Curie, thank you. It was for Marie Curie cancer, and we'd all agreed to wear a little hint of yellow, and we went too far and wore a whole.
Just to give it, I mean, that's unique. That's not a hint of yellow. You look like a canary, my friend.
There you go, Shawnee. Thank you very much. Have you got lots of pictures of me? Do we need to
I was
talk
going to say, this is weird.
I've got heaps of you too, Sonj, so just take it easy.
Steady.
Actually, Nick, I've just had one wee quick question through from Nigel quickly. Aren't Ulster games just the best to commentate on?
They are amazing, yeah, because I still want to. I politically, we can't call it Ravenhill anymore, can we? But in my mind, I say Ravenhill and then call it the Kingspan. But that ground, the only other, I grew up at Welford Road, which had an atmosphere all of its own when Leicester were playing well. But Ravenhill / Kingspan is extraordinary on a Friday night, particularly in Europe when Ulster are in full sail. And I'm sure that Shawnee will agree. The games can be fantastic, tries can be amazing, but you've got to have an underlying soundtrack to it to really drive you along as a commentator. And whenever you're watching Ulster, you've always got that soundtrack, and it's the easiest job in the world, commentating on Ulster when they're winning games that you wouldn't expect them to win in Europe.
Certainly your commentary on Robert Balakoon's first try for in Europe for Ulster was an absolute gem. I've never seen such excitement. But everybody. Oh, well, that's only when he gets the Gregan stare. But look, folks, thank you very much for agreeing to come on the show tonight. It's been an absolutely fantastic voyage through the myriads of commentating, producing, the Sharpies and seals. Just those things you'll never forget. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Our next show coming up is actually tomorrow night at 7:30 UK time, and also in catch up. But our South African roundup show, Drie Bakke, a ball and blitzpod, with Andy Daniel from Scrum 5, and it's a very special mental health and sport program. And on the show, we've got Neil Clark and TMO for the RFE, David Rose, and they're going to be chatting with Andrew about mental health and how that's affected us, certainly in these strange times. We can see the great effect that's had. So really, that's it for me. Thank you very much to Sonia, Shawnee, Nick. If you just want to stay behind for a wee minute afterwards, I'm off now to find my perch back on the wall. So leave me to the Night King and stand up for your Ulster men and women. Say have a good night.
Bye.